what are we talking about here? Luckily, if I look at the agenda of this conference, notwithstanding its title, this is really about the current economic crisis and how to adroitly manage it. So, now, whatever be the case, in my remarks, I'm going to basically suggest to you that the enforcement of competition norms promotes economic well-being and development. Now, happily, this holds true for all times, during periods of recession as well as boom. Often during periods of economic recession or crisis, strong arguments are mounted and are even accepted by government economic managers, calling for the suspension or dilution of competition law enforcement. Equally enough, such dilution has proved disastrous almost every time. I might point out that in the wake of the 1929 crash, the United States decided to go soft on competition law enforcement, what the Americans call antitrust. Empirical studies done subsequently have shown conclusively that this actually caused the depression to be longer and severer. In fact, whenever and wherever competition norms have been sacrificed as a strategic response to stem a crisis situation, both the economy and the consumer have suffered. Pakistan, because I was recently involved in this, if you look at the sugar industry, this has been governed for decades by a most convoluted and a most oppressive regulatory structure that is violative of all competition norms. And the most recent crowning glory of which was a rather unreasonable price fixation that was done. Now, all this has and continues to actually impose very high costs on the economy, and apart from a commodity crisis that seems to take place every now and then, and sugar is no different. And in Britain, we find that Her Majesty's government is already full of regrets for having recently exempted a banking merger from pre-merger clearance of UK's Competition Commission and the conditions the Commission may have imposed in this connection. Enforcing an adequate competition regime and keeping markets competitive is really as important during periods of economic hardship as it is during periods of boom or normal times. In fact, it is even more important during periods of economic stress. It's just like driving a car on a highway. I mean, while it is ordinarily important to observe speed limits and drive safely, it is even more important to do so when road conditions are bad and it is icy, dark, and raining, because that is when dangers lurk, that is when dangers are greater, and things can go wrong. Now, with this background, I would like to take a look at the global financial crisis, the crisis that besets the world today. Now, I know up to a point we are heading out of this crisis, but we are still there in it. What really went wrong? And I can tell you that only 3 years ago, I was at an investment conference in New York, and there were lots of eminent speakers there, including Mr. Greenspan and others. And the tall claim was made that the US financial system is safe and secure. It is sound. All loopholes have been plugged, and nothing could go wrong. It was like the Titanic, unstoppable, unsinkable. but it did. Things did go wrong. And if you look at it a little deeper below the skin, the reality is that in the United States, where the trouble began, the system was very loosely regulated. For 8 years of the Bush presidency, there was a somewhat extreme form of commitment to free enterprise, to no government intervention in any commercial activity, to complete and total laissez-faire. The perceived wisdom was that markets are self-correcting and should be left to their own devices, and that the best environment for business to grow and thrive where there is minimal supervision, minimal regulation, better still, no supervision, no regulation. Now, not only was sectoral regulation, like bank regulation or securities regulation, openly derided and belittled, but also the enforcement of competition norms or antitrust norms was actually weakened and was actually discouraged. Quite apart from excesses and imprudence that followed, which were rampant, businesses trampled over each other. The strong suppressed the weak, the dominant abused the small, and there was a free-for-all jungle-like atmosphere. The system clearly rotted from within, and it was like a Pandora's box or a can full of worms just waiting to be opened by accident or by design, and this is what happened, figuratively, of course. Now, if instead of their misconceived ardor in favor of more or less unbridled freedom for commercial activity, the United States had applied competent regulation. I'm not talking about oppressive regulation. I'm not talking about regulation that interferes in economic transactions. And also engaged in the due enforcement of antitrust norms or antitrust standards. The current crisis may not have occurred. It's almost axiomatic that the more an economy liberalizes, the more is the need for sound regulation and effective enforcement of competition standards. As a consequence of bad public policy, in just 1 or 2 years, Wall Street inflicted more harm on capitalism than could have been wrought by the proponents of socialism in even 100 years. There is clearly a need to save capitalism from capitalists. The ecology of a jungle has no level playing field. As a result, all animals are under constant threat, which is surely no way for civilized human beings to live and to make their lives. It is necessary to ensure that the rights and interests of all economic agents are protected in a fair manner, and they are enabled to operate and compete with each other on a level playing field. Apart from the edifice of laws and regulations and their effective implementation, the due enforcement of recognized and accepted competition norms is really a very important element to achieve that end. Now, I would like just to turn specifically to competition law and policy. It is noteworthy that while economic efficiency and consumer protection are the two motivating pillars of modern competition legislation, any competition law, it is the consumer protection aspect with its populist